Hello there, everyone, and thank you so much for watching. I'm Sam, and I'll be your moderator throughout this presentation. In just a second, we'll be joined by Tyson Maybar, one of our senior financial advisors, and Tyson is going to be covering some HSA strategies that you can use as a PG&E employee. Before Tyson comes on, I'd like to just very quickly remind you, we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by PG&E. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors here, so please keep that in mind as you're listening along today. After the presentation, Tyson will answer a couple questions. We do try to keep it short. We don't like to take up too much of your afternoon, but he will answer a couple questions. I encourage you to ask away in that Q&A box. It's completely anonymous, and what he does not answer live with you today, I will make sure another PG&E focused advisor answers either on the phone with you or through an email after the presentation has ended. You will also see some links popping up on your screen. These are going to guide you to our calendar as well as our YouTube, where I invite you to please follow us and watch more of our PG&E focused content, as well as a link to the cash flow analysis, which Tyson will go more into depth with you about throughout his presentation. And with all of that out of the way now, let's jump right into the content with Tyson Maybar.
Hello everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar series this afternoon. My name is Tyson Mayvar. I'm one of the retirement specialists here for the Retirement Group. And on today's webinar series, we're going to be covering HSAs, or health savings accounts, how we utilize these to be more tax efficient with our retirement savings and build up a nest egg of money that can be used for medical expenses before retirement, or ideally after retirement if possible. So we'll talk a little bit about what an HSA is, the triple tax advantage that you enjoy when contributing to these accounts, and how to truly maximize these accounts based on the contribution limits as well as the growth potential most HSAs allow for us to take advantage of. So HSAs are health savings accounts, a way to save money on a tax deferred basis, so we get a tax deduction on any dollars we put into this account, to be used for qualified medical expenses before or after retirement, and with a lot of flexibility to roll these funds over potentially for the rest of our life, and in many cases for healthcare expenses after we retire. As many of you know, that's when healthcare becomes most expensive, once our body starts breaking down on us. So this triple tax advantage lies in the fact that we get a tax deduction when we put money into an HSA, so it reduces our taxable income for the year. Most HSA plans allow us to invest the contributions, so we get tax-free earnings or tax-deferred earnings that become tax-free if we use these funds for medical expenses at some point in the future. It could be before retirement, could be after retirement. The longer the funds sit in there, the more tax advantageous the contributions become, because of the fact that those earnings are tax-free on any investments that we decide to allocate into our HSA accounts. Now, contribution limits for 2025, they're going to be $4,300 for individuals, $8,550 for families, and if we are over 55, we get a catch-up contribution equal to $1,000 per year. Keep in mind, it's different than the catch-up age for 401k contributions, which is age 50. For HSA contributions, you have to be 55 or older to get that extra $1,000 catch-up contribution. There's no minimum for deposits, so you can contribute as much or as little as you can afford or believe makes sense each year, up to these limits, of course. And they're designed to help people save for medical expenses, ideally in retirement, but they do not have to be in retirement. You could put money into an HSA this year and spend the money in the same year, effectively still giving you access to the tax benefit, the tax deduction in that current year, as well as the potential earnings that you may have earned throughout the year. And the tax benefits really get great the longer the funds sit in this account, assuming that they're earning some positive rate of interest over the years. Now let's talk a little bit about the covered expenses, some additional uses and flexibilities of HSAs, and then how to utilize the investment opportunities within HSAs. So pretty much all medical expenses, even dental and vision expenses, we can use HSA dollars for, even, believe it or not, for medical related travel expenses, and often some mental health type of medical expenses related to wellness and substance abuse. All of these can be potential expenses that we can utilize our HSA funds for, again, before or after we retire. Now, they're very flexible in that we do not have to spend the dollars by the end of the year like FSAs, which we'll talk about in a moment, wherein you either use the funds during the year or you lose the funds. HSAs do not have that stringent requirement, and it allows for us, the younger especially we start saving in these accounts, the more funds that we will be able to have in retirement, and the better the tax advantages will be. It turns out we can also use HSA contributions for Medicare expenses after we turn 65 and enroll in Medicare, for premiums at least, as well as expenses on Medicare. But the premiums is a pretty big deal for somebody who's over 65, especially if you're relatively healthy. You're still going to have those premiums, and you can utilize those funds later for Medicare premiums. Also important to note, once we enroll in Medicare, we can no longer contribute to HSAs, even if we're still working and on a high deductible health plan. If we are enrolled in Medicare, we're not going to be able to contribute to our HSA anymore. So keep that in mind. Now, the investment opportunities are going to be a function of your actual HSA provider. Number one, if they offer investment of the funds that you contribute into your HSA, and then what's the limitations of those investment options. Every plan is going to be a little bit different. So it's important to understand this flexibility before contributing the money. It's possible that you will not have the option to contribute based on your high deductible health plan, the option to invest those funds rather. But most do, and that could be also an incentive to choose a different HSA plan if your HSA is not offering investment of the funds in the HSA. That could be a reason to change your HSA provider, because of how valuable over time the tax-free growth and earnings of those investments can become, at least when used for medical expenses. Now, there's another way to save for healthcare savings with tax benefits through FSA, so we'll talk about the differences of those two accounts. We'll give an example of somebody who contributed to an HSA versus somebody who with similar tax bracket and expenses, medical expenses, with the benefits of actually having that HSA, and then some limitations as well as eligibility requirements. I'll zoom in here for the HSA versus FSA chart here. HSAs, like we talked about, you can roll over the unused funds every year indefinitely. FSAs have a use it or lose it restriction, meaning that you could essentially put money into an account that you don't even get to use for medical expenses if you didn't have the qualifying medical expenses that year. Big disadvantage of FSAs. HSA contributions are flexible throughout the year, whereas FSAs, your contributions are fixed based on your election. HSAs are available for self-employed contractors and unemployed individuals, whereas FSAs are only available through an employer. HSAs have the tax-free growth of your investments like we talked about, whereas FSAs, you can't even invest the contributions and they don't even roll over into the next year, as you know. And with HSAs, you do have to have a high deductible health plan, HDHP, whereas FSAs, you can have any health plan. It doesn't have to be a high deductible health plan necessarily. So one advantage of the FSAs, but the reality is HSAs have a lot of additional benefits. Is why most people that we talk to and work with as clients will end up utilizing the HSA much more often than an FSA. Let's do an example here. We have Alex, who's an individual who contributed $3,500 to her HSA throughout the year. She's in a 25% tax bracket, and she saved about $875 in federal taxes that year as a result of this contribution. Her employer contributed an additional $1,000 to her HSA, which is not offered by every employer, but certainly if it is, an even bigger advantage to contributing to your HSA. Alex invested the funds and saw growth of 5% throughout the year on her investments in her HSA. She had qualifying healthcare expenses of $2,500, which she paid through her HSA. May or may not have been the best way to go, depending on how much longer she had until retirement, what her other resources were, and what her health was also. It could be more advantageous just to pay out of pocket in an effort to continue deferring taxes and getting the growth on the investments over time. Her out-of-pocket expenses, based on her high deductible health plan, they had a $1,500 deductible, and she was able to pay that also out of her HSA funds, all on a pre-tax basis. So let's compare that to Jordan, who did not participate in HSA, paid $3,500 for healthcare expenses with after-tax money, same tax bracket of 25%. I mean, she needs to earn about $4,667 before taxes to cover the same costs as Alex did with her pre-tax dollars. Jordan paid $1,167 more in taxes than Alex did because she did not get the tax deduction that Alex did. Did not get any investment opportunity with the money or tax-free growth on those investments. And Jordan paid the same $2,500 in healthcare expenses as Alex, but without the tax benefit. So in this case, it's clear to see how much more advantageous, just from a tax perspective, this was for Alex compared to Jordan. Let's break this down. The tax savings. Alex reduced her taxable income, had lower taxes as a result of the contribution, similar to tax deduction you would get from a 401k contribution. Also having tax deferred earnings on these funds and potentially tax free as long as she used them in the future for healthcare expenses, which in this case she did in the same year, in fact. The portability, Alex is going to continue rolling over any unused HSA dollars every year and have an account that's growing that could be used for medical expenses in the future, especially as she ages and may have more medical expenses down the road. And they both face similar out-of-pocket costs, but again, Alex was able to use pre-tax dollars, making this a much more cost-effective way to pay for her medical expenses that year. So let's talk about some of the eligibility limitations. We talked about having to have a high deductible health plan. This is a reason many people will choose to have a high deductible health plan, even if they're maybe not that healthy and expect to have expenses, which means they're probably going to meet their deductible every year. There could be some still benefits to using the HSA to offset some of the higher costs associated with the higher deductible. And of course, these plans are typically going to have lower premiums as well if they come with a higher deductible. They're very advantageous to higher earners. The higher your tax bracket, the more advantageous these tax benefits are going to be. So for example, somebody who's in the 37% tax bracket is getting a 37-cent benefit for every dollar that they contribute to their HSA because of the tax deduction. And if they remain in a higher tax bracket in retirement, even more tax benefits of having that money to pay for medical expenses rather than having to pull that money, for example, out of an IRA, which is taxable. These HSA withdrawals are not going to be taxable in the future as long as they're used for healthcare expenses. Now, unfortunately, we talk about these high deductible health plans and HSA benefits all the time with clients, especially around this time of year during open enrollment. Unfortunately, 74% of Americans over the age of 50 don't have a written plan for their retirement. We believe this is absolutely unacceptable, folks. Given the number of advisory firms out there that are willing to do this for you on a complimentary basis, including ours, we're happy to put this plan together for you. The goal here is to figure out when's the optimal time to retire. Should you be contributing to an HSA? Should be contributing to your Roth 401k or Roth IRA? Maybe considering Roth conversions. Do you qualify for net unrealized appreciation on your employer stock? Are you optimizing your investment options within your 401k? And do you qualify for an in-service rollover that could be advantageous? These are all the things that we cover when we go through this analysis. Please take advantage of it if you've never had us do one of these for you in the past. And if it's been over a year since we've updated yours, we're happy to do this on a complimentary basis. Just let us know and we'll spend a few minutes with you to put the numbers together. With that, we're going to wrap it up for today. I appreciate everybody's time. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Let us know if you have any specific questions on the HSAs or anything in general related to your retirement plans. And if you'd like to schedule a meeting, you can call us at 800-900-5867. You could email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can also use this QR code here on the left to schedule a meeting with myself or one of my colleagues at the Retirement Group. And the QR code on the right is a way to follow us on LinkedIn for variety of different content similar to today's on a whole host of different topics related to retirement planning and optimization of your retirement. Thank you again, folks. Everybody have a good rest of your week. We hope to talk to you all very soon.